This video is about making input terms for each individual file, which is this part in a macro, in this macro. So we've expanded the substeps of this macro for making all terms from all files. Inside there is a loop part. Remember, there's a loop part, and this one actually we can go into the details to view that for each file how these terms are made. So this is to illustrate the loop. So each loop is going to define the file name. So each time from the string it's going to get a file name, for example, the vet. And then it is going to run this function, which is this one, which is called a MakeInputTermsEachFiles. And we're going to go into the details of that. So again, we're going to right click and click this show substeps, and then we're going to view the contents corresponding to this macro, right? So again, I'm going to put the diagram and the program side by side to go through that. The first step in this macro is to get the variable name and type from a previously prepared file. So this file is named like the file name plus the code row. So this file was prepared in a previous step. Well, actually it happened when loading this supporting.sas file. Indeed, when loading this supporting file, it's going to run the lines to create these tables. Yeah, so like this table, this, that, whatever. So it is always called a code row and something, you know, which is the file name. So take the example of this file. It's called inactive code. So this is for the file called inactive. So inside actually that file is going to have two columns. One is called the name, the file name. The other is the type. So it is a mix of the type and also the length of the variable. Sometimes, you know, not all the time. So basically the program here is to, according to the string values there, to determine the length of the variable, the name of the variable, and the other required terms, for example, the format, you know. So eventually it is going to have a table with the following ones. One is the variable, the second is the term of this anyway. So I'm going to show an example. So here is the result part for this step one. So it is going to have the variables, which is corresponding to the variables in the original file, which is called in active call.row, right? So it's going to have all the variables here, which is called the input variable. And then it is going to determine the type, but this time is in a string. So this part, it will be used in the input in file import, the statement in the import program. So for the numeric variables, there is nothing to specify, but for the characteristic ones, that you have to specify a $sign there, right? So the next one is for the input term. So this one, we're going to explain the syntax later or in separate videos. But like for this one, basically it says that you should read that and define that as the length of 8. This is for this is a character variable, and it should have the length of 29. This is a length of 200, whatever. So okay, so let's just talk about it briefly. So the column before that means that from the original file, you should read for the total length of, say, like for in this case, total length of 200, but you're going to stop when you have the first delimiter. So let's say that the original plan is to read for a string of 200 in length, but if like after the 7 characters you have a space as the delimiter, then you're going to stop there, right? So this column is actually do that trick. It is going to allow you to read for a max length of like 200, but it's going to stop at the first delimiter. The last one is the variable format. Anyway, so these are the records created by this first temporary file, which is in this step, right? So the next step is to save it to the final, but this time we're going to merge all of these 4 records into one. How are we going to do it? So very simple. So we're going to retain the value from each row, and we're going to concatenate the values by, like the first row we had this, and we're going to retain that value. The second row we have the value of that. So we're going to concatenate the values in row 1 and row 2. So the values will be like drag code, and then a space, and then a drag identification number, IA. So for the same idea, we're going to concatenate in, the values in the 3rd row and the 4th row. So by the time that we reach the last row, we're going to have all the values from row 1 to row 4. So it will be the same idea to concatenate the values in each record into the last one. All right, so now, because the last the last record contains the complete string with all the variables, all the types, all the terms, so we're only going to keep this last record. And this is a trick that usually we do in this kind of condition. So when we read this file, we're going to assign a temporary variable called the last. So basically this last is going to check whether or not it reaches the end of the file, which is the last record. So if we reach the end, then we're going to let last equal to I think it is a value of true. So if it is true, then we're going to keep that last record. So basically that's how it works in